It's not easy being the one everyone counts on to keep the facility running, no matter the weather or supply chain hiccup. But we get you, Raymond in Buffalo, and Maria in Miami, Jules in Minneapolis, and Stan in Central Indiana, taking control of everything that's under your control. At Grainger, we're here for you with experienced branch staff at over 250 locations so you get the product you're looking for. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It used to be hard to find the exact auto parts you needed, and that meant spending a lot of time at swap meets. It's a different game now when you can order exactly what you need from eBay Motors. They have 122 million parts, so you can always find the right fitment. Spend less time searching and more time building with the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Ethos DFS Today podcast. I am your host, Mike Apotro, joined by the one and only Haaris Kermani, here to break down this wonderful Monday, January 3rd slate. That's January 3rd, 2022, Haaris. I know last we spoke was 2021. It's been a while, my friend, but how are you?
Yeah, well, Happy New Year to everyone. It's been great. Glad to be back here on New Year. Got a 10-game slate to start things off. And, you know, unlike my own health, the Raptors are back to full health. So that's a nice little way to get things going, even though they have us sitting at home the whole time now. All of our January games got canceled, which is no fun. But, hey, man, it's been good basketball. It's good to get everyone back. And in general, you know, they got the COVID protocols down to 5 days now, so it's getting more manageable. Better for fantasy as well, not having to look over your shoulder every time you put someone in until, you know, the hope that they're in actually.
Well, we're gonna have to do like a little test, a little, you know, experiment just to see what the Raptors' record looks like with you out without you going to the games compared to going to the games. Just see if there's anything that we need to kind of monitor going forward, whether or not we're just gonna keep you home for Raptors fans' sake, or actually, you know, let you go back to those games once they allow it. But glad to have you back, man. As always, hope you had a great New Year. Hope everybody else listening to this had a great New Year as well. And yeah, you're right. This looks like a fun 10-game slate, man. I'm really excited about this one. You know, you always get those feelings sometimes on slates before they kick off, and you know, I've always been one of those guys where it's like generally when I get the great feeling is when I you know, tone it down a little bit, because it's just how any sort of gambling or fantasy or DFS works, is when you think you got it in the bag, you get kicked right in your teeth. And then the nights where it's like, I'm not really feeling it, let me load up one or two contests. And the nights I generally do a lot better. But I've been on a little heater, a little bit of a heater with some of the calls lately. Looking forward to keeping it going. But we have 10 games. Before we jump into anything, quick shout out to Thrive Fantasy, guys. Come prop up with us over there. If you haven't already joined, if you haven't signed up, I really don't know what you're waiting for. This promo code, it makes it worthwhile. And if you're wondering what Thrive Fantasy is, it's a fantasy or a daily fantasy sports and esports app only for player props. So with Thrive, you eliminate the countless hours of research, focus only on top-tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. So you won't be talking about a lot of these G League guys or you know, your free agents being signed off out of retirement. It's only going to be the top tier guys, and what you do is choose 10 out of 20 available player props to build your lineup. Each prop is assigned a fantasy value for both the over and under, based on how likely it is to hit the most props, rack up the most points, and win a share of the prize pool. Thrive is over $50,000 in guaranteed prizes weekly for the NBA and has awarded over $6 million so far. So head over there, use the promo code ETHOS, ETHOS, when you sign up, and you receive a 100% instant first deposit match on up to $100. Download Thrive Fantasy in the App Store or Play Store, or you can visit their website at www.thrivefantasy.com. Sign up and prop today. All right, my good friend, we have 10 games. First game on the docket is the Charlotte Hornets on the second half of a back-to-back going against the Washington Wizards. For the Hornets, no injury report just yet. We just saw that P.J. Washington was ruled out last minute of tonight's game. But for the Wizards, Thomas Bryant, Spencer Dinwiddie, Anthony Gill, Rui Hachimura, Montrezl Harrell, Aaron Holiday, Raul Neto, and Brad Wanamaker have all already been ruled out. We do not have a game line or a total just yet for this game, so we're going to have to keep an eye on it, but I expect it to be fairly high. I'll pass it over to you. Why don't you start off with the Charlotte Hornets?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just one of those games where the Hornets will be on a second half of a back-to-back, but given how badly they got their butts kicked tonight, you saw the minutes total were kept pretty low in that Phoenix game. They were 133 to 99. Everyone in the starting lineup pretty much played 25 minutes or less, except for in fact, no, none of them did. All of them were 25 minutes or less. So I think it's a pretty good spot for them to be able to come back in a Washington game where, Washington themselves have been, playing pretty well as of late. So I expect this game to actually be kind of a high-paced, pretty close one. I know we don't have the point spread as of yet, but I expect it to be somewhere in the low single digits because it's just one of those games where Washington will remain pesky at home and Charlotte, being the best offense in the league, will be able to take advantage of that. Now, LaMelo, who's coming off a bad game, again, is back on that sub 10,000 range. He's kind of been alternating between pretty good games and slightly mediocre ones. And I think this is going to be one of those where he gets the opportunity to be able to come back. So I'm really liking him at 9,500. A number of these other guys are pretty fairly priced on there. So I think LaMelo is pretty much where I'm sticking. I do expect at some point Miles Bridges is going to get that turnaround game as well. He's just kind of been sitting around that 40 DK points most of these times, which is pretty good considering his salary's all the way down to 7,400. But I do think with the rest of the slate, we have a couple of opportunities to get guys who can get 6, if not 7x. So, LaMelo's probably the major guy I'm sticking with here.
Yep, probably the only guy for me too. It's just like you said. You said it perfectly. The size of the slate, the amount of options we have to limit our player pool. It's easy to say that there's 2 guys in this game or 3 guys on this side of the ball that we really like. We might have interest in them, but compared to other options that we have available, I think LaMelo is the only guy I'm looking at. I mean, you said it perfectly. They got blown out today. It's a good bounce back spot for him. These teams have already played twice this season. LaMelo put up about 53 DK points as an average in both those, played heavy minutes in both those. So he's just about averaging a triple-double against his team. Sign me up. I'm good with LaMelo. He's probably one of my top spend-ups. I have one other guy, and it's funny because they actually both happen to be in this game, and it's going to be Bradley Beal on the other side of the ball. I've been riding the Beal train since he's been playing point guard. With all these point guards sitting out, it's been point Beal, and came out with a career high 17 assists in that last game, 10 assists the game prior. That's all we needed. I mean, I've been off of Beal all season long until he swapped over to point guard, and it's simply because he just needed something else to kind of elevate his scoring ability in his game. And if there's any possible way his usage should have gone up any more, it's doing this. So still getting 20-plus shot attempts, but now opens up the whole assist avenue where if he's going to get close to 8, 9 assists like he's been doing over the past 3 games, I'm good with that. So I think Bradley Beal at 10-4 is definitely an option. Gafford now being priced up to 6K. Only played 20 minutes against Chicago, which, against his former team, a little surprising. Close game, everything else. He wasn't in foul trouble. So, going back, I'm probably going to have to review that one a little bit just to kind of see exactly what happened. Not too sure on why he only played 20. Maybe you have the answer when I pass it over to you. But at 6K, I still have a ton of interest in Daniel Gafford. I mean, Charlotte's been pretty poor against opposing centers. They've been getting killed by 3-point shots. So those are the 2 spots I look, and with Beal and Gafford are my 2 number 1 options, or number 1 and number 2 option, I guess.
Yeah, and I think for Gafford, it was purely because he just wasn't playing well. Yes, the numbers themselves look great, 19 and 8 in that time, but he was a -12, and he was getting absolutely blown apart every time Vucevic was given him as a defensive assignment. So I just think it was purely a matchup-based move for them, and I do expect he'll get back into a regular kind of minute rotation in this game. That being said, for that 6,000-ish range, I think there are other center options, especially one of my favorites is coming up for 6,600. He's going to be in there in that pool for that. So I'll probably jump on that. I do agree with you on Beal. If you feel LaMelo is going to be doing well, maybe it's one of those situations where you run it back with Beal on the other side and look through for value on the other end. I know we don't like going too heavy on one game, but I think both these guys are in a really, really good spot to be able to pretty much smash the value that's over here. As you said, Beal as a point guard has been a revelation. He looks more engaged. Altogether, he just looks more comfortable with everything that's going on. So I think at 10-4, that's a pretty good price tag for him to be able to get to somewhere close to that 60 range again. And can't go wrong with that.
All right, we'll move on to the next game. Houston Rockets traveling to Philadelphia, taking on the 76ers. For the Rockets, Armani Brooks, DeJuan Gerard, Alfred Sengun, all ruled out. Eric Gordon is questionable. Miles Powell, Ben Simmons, Jaden Springer are all out, and then your boy Matisse Thybulle is questionable. And I say your boy because it is your boy. We do not have a game total or a spread, but we got to imagine the spread's going to be fairly significant in this one. I'll pass over Houston to you, the away team, and give me your best take because I'm kind kind of intrigued to see what you have to say about some of these guys, given the situation that happened in that last game.
Yeah, it's pretty hilarious. I mean, Kevin Porter Jr. just can't seem to find himself out of trouble, whether it's throwing food in Cleveland to be able to get himself thrown out there over a locker, or whether it's whatever happened at halftime over here, both for him and Christian Wood. So it's one of those where you really need to kind of keep track of what's going on, because I have a feeling the Rockets are going to try and be a little bit disciplinarian on these guys. I have a feeling they may sit these guys out one game just to kind of show them that you can't act like this. It's not professional. That being said, I do think Jalen Green, regardless of what situation comes out, is in play for 5,200. I think he's just one of those situations where he's getting himself into the groove. Again, the rookie wall hit him pretty badly early on in the year, but he's found himself much better, especially from his three-point shooting. He's been at about 50% for his last 4 games, if not slightly better. And it's just one of those things where if he gets the opportunity, especially if either of Kevin Porter Jr. or Christian Wood are out, I expect him to be the number 1 offensive guy on this team. So I do think there are a number of really great options, but the fact that he has that shooting guard eligibility, will get tons of usage, definitely puts him somewhere near the top of my player pool. So I'm excited to have him. And then Jayshawn Tate as well. Again, that power forward situation, being able to be essentially a point forward for this team whenever he gets that greater usage. And if it's not going to be Jalen Green, it's going to be going likely to Jayshawn Tate. So really keep track of the news on this one. But those guys at 5,200, I actually really like both of them at their price tags, and I might even see myself pairing them.
Yeah, I think I'm right on there with both those. I usually don't play too much Tate, to be honest. But I definitely see myself having some shares of Green. And then the only other guys I wanted to mention would be like Daniel Tice at 3,500. Like you said, I'm expecting something to come of this whole, throwing the soup and not checking back in for Christian Wood. I say throwing the soup because I think that was J.R. Smith that threw soup years ago.
Yes.
So now it's just always a fun guessing game where you try to guess what kind of food they threw. No one knows. Could have been soup. Could have been. I think I Googled it about a year back last time. Kevin Porter Jr. threw food, and his favorite food is spaghetti, his mom said. So there's a decent chance it could have been macaroni or spaghetti that he threw. But in all seriousness, I expect there to be some sort of punishment, whether it's only playing a half, not starting, completely suspended. We don't know yet. So we're going to have to kind of monitor this and see. Nonetheless, I mean, Kevin Porter Jr., his thigh injury has me crossing him off left and right. I just don't trust this dude coming back and playing a full game regardless. But I could see Daniel Tice with no Sengun, possibly no Wood. It's a terrible matchup. Bottom line, it is not the best matchup. You don't want to target guys going against Embiid. It could be one of those issues he gets into foul trouble fairly early, but they don't have anybody else. So, and for the sheer fact that this dude, if he can stay out of foul trouble, is going to play at least 30 minutes at 3,500, be their number 1 rebounding option, I'm good with that. And then you said Tate, and I would also lump in KJ Martin in there as well. He played 31 minutes in that game against Denver, put up 32 DK points. If we see no Wood, I can imagine blowout scenario, whatever you want to say. This guy's probably looking at a floor of about 25, 26, and upwards of 30 minutes, regardless of the scenario. So those are the 2 that I would add in with the other guys you mentioned. On the Philly side of things, it's going to be tough for me to have a lot of interest. This game spread, especially if we see there's no Kevin Porter Jr. or no Wood, it would probably be around that 12 mark is what I'm imagining, somewhere around there. It's going to be significant. So I just don't want to spend the 11-4 on Joel Embiid in the game that I don't expect to stay close. Tobias Harris his price tag is finally coming down, 8-2. But I think there's better options that we could look at on this slate. Seth Curry and Tyrese Maxey. I always prefer Maxey over Curry for the most part. Played him against that in Brooklyn against that in that last one, and it paid off well. But I just don't trust this whole situation. I don't trust the game. I don't trust anything about this one. But I think Maxey would probably be the only guy I have even a little consideration for.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you 24/7 with supplies and solutions for every industry and access to product specialists ready to help. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Moms, at Vanguard, you're more than just a parent. You're the heart of the family. You're the first responder to any need. You can be the hero and the villain, sometimes on the same day. Because you know that in the end, your legacy is the values you instill in them. At Vanguard, you're more than just an investor. You're an owner, because the future you're building is bigger than yourself. Discover the value of ownership at Vanguard.com. Fund shareholders own the funds that own Vanguard. Vanguard Marketing Corporation Distributor.
Yeah, fair enough. Given the spread, I may actually find myself pivoting and throwing a little bit of Drummond in there, just that 5,600. If he had 16 minutes in the last game, that was enough for him to drop 28.5, and his price tag has dropped down into that sub 6,000 range. So it's just one of those where, if he gets an opportunity to play 20, 25 minutes in a game that's a blowout and they want to throw him out there, I think that's a good spot to be a little sneaky, because he could easily drop 40 for you on those kind of nights. Obviously more of a GPP pivot rather than something in cash, but I think it's something to keep in mind given the other opportunities that may be there.
Fair enough. Memphis Grizzlies traveling to Brooklyn, taking on the Nets. This one should be a pretty fun one to watch. Aldridge is questionable due to right foot soreness. Joe Harris and Kyrie rolled out. And then for the Grizzlies, Kyle Anderson, Dylan Brooks, Shaq Buchanan, John Conchard, DeAnthony Melton, Sam Merrill, Xavier Tillman, all ruled out. Zaire Williams is doubtful. This game right now looks like it doesn't have a game total or spread. Theme of the night. Actually, I'm looking. I might as well just say it now. We don't have any of them right now from everything I'm seeing. So I'll pass it over to you, because I know you want to talk about somebody at that $6,600 range, I'm sure. I'll let you handle the Memphis Grizzlies.
There you go. And Memphis, just given everyone just being out over here, is going to be essentially running a 6 to 7 person lineup on this. And I just think it's a great opportunity for them to be able to have a really high paced game. I mean, Brooklyn hasn't been incredible defensively throughout this time. And, they kind of keep you in the game late. We saw that with the Clippers game in the last one, where even though Brooklyn should have had that game in the bag, they just have that opportunity of just turning the ball over, keeping it close. And I expect Memphis is going to be one of those teams to take advantage of that. So Jaren Jackson at 6,600, there's really no size per se to be able to defend him on the outside. I don't think they want to put Kevin Durant on him for extended periods of time. It's just not, the kind of matchup they usually find himself in. He'd probably get himself stuck more of the guys on the inside rather than out on the perimeter. So I expect Jaren Jackson will get a little bit of opportunity to be able to take advantage of a Nick Claxton, or if they decide to go with Bruce Brown out on him as well, just to kind of try to throw him out on the perimeter. But regardless, I think the upside is absolutely sky high in this kind of a game. At 6,600, I played him in the Spurs game, paid off pretty well, 41.25 in that game as well. And I just think his floor is just so safe right now, as long as he stays out of foul trouble. And by and large, he has found himself able to do that for the last couple of games. Hasn't passed 3 personal fouls in the last 3 of them. Hasn't been anywhere close to fouling out all the way back till December the 19th. So I really like him in the spot over here. And then also Steven Adams gets an opportunity to be able to do something here too. If they're going to be throwing a lot more Nick Claxton, I could see him getting that chance to be able to play close to that 26 minutes that he did in the Spurs game, where he's become more of that facilitating big, but he's still getting somewhere close to those 10 field goal attempts. If he can do that there, I think his floor is also incredibly safe into that mid 20s over there, and he's already shown his upside to be able to get to that. So I think there's a lot of options here. And the final one, more as a GPP pivot again, if they play Tyus Jones, the kind of minutes he played in the last game, 29 minutes in that one, dropped 34 DK points. I think just given the fact that they require kind of that backup ball handler, they don't have DeAnthony Melton over here, they don't even have Conchar to be able to help a little with that. I think you're going to get a lot more usage out of Tyus Jones as that first man off the bench. And at 4,000, I think that's a pretty solid play to be able to throw in, considering you've gone with some of the more expensive guys in the earlier games.
Yeah, I'm on Tyus. But I wouldn't be shocked if they actually start him with Kyle Anderson being out this game, move Bane up to the 3, just do a starting backcourt of Tyus and John Morant. Wouldn't shock me one bit. I know that they did just make some hardship signings. I think it was Tyrell Terry and Quan Jeffries, a few of these other guys. So just keep an eye on that news. But I think Tyus is probably looking at close to 30 minutes regardless of the situation, whether he starts or comes off the bench. And if he starts, they'll likely just stagger him and Morant's minutes. That way they always have at least one ball handler on. So you might see him get yanked out of the quarter, 5 minutes in, 6 minutes in, something like that. Check back in with like a minute or 2 left. But regardless, you're going to see a significant amount of him. That's probably the only real option, but I wouldn't fault you if you wanted to go to a Jaren Jackson or a Morant. Like you said, these guys are down bodies, and between the two of them, they should be both looking at least 18 shot attempts is what I'm imagining. Bane as well will probably be right in there. Probably go, Morant, Bane, and then Jaren as far as usage. On the other side of the ball, we're looking at Harden coming off of another monster game. Kevin Durant coming back has not slowed him down one bit. We're talking 4 straight games with at least 70 TK points. So the dude is just playing huge minutes, and he's cooking. It's the James Harden that we're used to seeing. I mean, I'm going to have shares of him. It's just that simple. Is he my top spend up? I don't know just yet. I mean, I got to see how the build comes down. If I have the extra money, maybe I do upgrade to like a LaMelo from him or a Beal to him, or, I could see that. I really do like those two guys in that first game, but I think Harden's right up there with those other two guys as my top spend ups on this entire slate. Over Durant, so I'm probably not going to end up having many shares of Durant, and that's probably it for me on this side of the ball. If we see Aldridge is ruled out, you can look at Claxton at 5K. I probably won't. I think there's other options that I have a little bit more interest in. I just haven't seen much of a ceiling from him. So him having 25 or 30, that's solid. Yeah, sure, that pays off the price tag. But in the atmosphere, in the environment that we're playing in right now with DFS, just hitting 5 and even 6x isn't really winning you too much. And even then, it might not win you anything at all. You really need to try to target guys that we know can get 7 or 8x. So I'll probably just stay with Harden over here.
Yeah, and I think at this point I'm almost forced to be able to do it, considering, well, one, he's one of my favorite players in the league, and two, every friend of mine would be roasting me if I didn't, considering how much I talk him up all the way through. And I mean, it was just a matter of him getting back in the rhythm. He hasn't been, shooting especially well, even in the last 2 games, but it's just one of those where you can see the bounces back in him. He's getting that first step. He's getting that opportunity to be able to kind of get himself back into the mode that we've seen him. I used to call it December Harden, where he would drop, 40-point triple doubles throughout. And it's just kind of that December that got taken away from him from protocols is coming out into January now. So at 11-3, I just think the ceiling remains absolutely sky high, as you said, until he has a game where he doesn't pay off his salary. I just don't see how you can't play him. And you talked about favorite spend up. I do think he's going to be my favorite spend up, given all the other potential options that are there for value that I think I could take advantage of. So James Harden will be the major guy going to here. I'm probably a little bit more high on Nick Claxton than some others, but again, at that center position for $5,000, I may actually decide to take that pivot and go with Drummond just because I like the upside as far as GPP is concerned.
All right. 4th game of the night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Orlando Magic traveling to Chicago. Orlando on the second half of the back-to-back for Chicago. Tony Bradley, Alex Caruso, Tyler Cook, Javonte Green, Marco Samanic, and Patrick Williams have all been ruled out. Looks like Lonzo should be back in this one. No injury report just yet for Orlando, but we should still see a boatload of these guys out, including Robin Lopez, Michael Carter-Williams, Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, Chuma Okeke, and I would assume most likely Cole Anthony as he's still recovering from that ankle injury. It looks like he came back a little bit too early on it when it first happened, and better be safe than sorry. The guy's having a career year right now. Get it? Granted, it's only his second season, but he's cooking. He's having a fantastic year. But I'll pass it over to you. Why don't you give us the breakdown of the Orlando Magic?
Yeah, and just coming off of watching that overtime game that they had against the Chicago Bulls, with Jalen dropped 50 on them. But Orlando, you really got to see that they were running a lot of offense through Wendell Carter Jr. Just given the fact that everyone is pretty much out as far as primary ball handlers are concerned, they didn't play RJ Hampton many minutes. And even though they played Tim Frazier, all he was really doing was bringing the ball up the court. So even though Carter Jr. is sitting there as a power forward, got 7 dimes in that game, was handling the ball a lot, both in the post and creating out of there. And the beneficiary of that was Terence Ross, who has come in as kind of the 6-man role again. He looks better. He had 2 great games in a row now, and at 4,400, as well as that small forward eligibility, he's probably one of my favorite value guys to be able to go and take on this. I think his price tag is going to start to kind of adjust to get into that mid 5,000s for the kind of usage he's going to need to have given everyone else's injuries. And Mo Bamba, who came back, is still kind of getting his conditioning up, so his minutes are still down, which is why I feel more comfortable kind of sticking with that Wendell Carter Jr. situation as a power forward. 7,400, I think, gives him a lot of upside to be able to go through, and you could probably run that back with Terence Ross, and that's a pretty good 1-2 punch right now.
Yeah, I mean, looking at just how well Terence Ross has been playing, I think he dropped like 30, 33 today.
Yeah.
It was the dude's lightning in a bottle. We always know that. Anytime he plays, there's always the opportunity that he can come out. And correct me if I'm wrong, when he was on the Raptors, didn't he have like a 40 or 50-point game? It was something absolutely insane when he was over there.
Yeah. The one night DeRozan was out and dropped 51 on the Clippers, only for Jamal Crawford to come and drop 40-something on the other end, and we still lost. But, quote, what a game, 51 points.
Yeah, I knew it was something absurd up there. But bottom line, the minutes have been there. He played 35 tonight. Shot attempts are there, 19 shot attempts. So he's in play. The only thing that I want to caution anytime it's a situation like this is We've seen plenty of nights where he's just cold. Guy played an overtime game, 19 shots. He is a jumper. Anytime you see guys that are jump shot makers and, just high athlete dunkers and stuff like that, the legs can be a little bit tired the following night, just like if anyone else were to hoop for a full day and the next day you feel a little heavy. So there is a little bit of worry for me just kind of chasing it, but I'm going to keep him in my player pool right now at 4,400 if he's going to keep having that usage in the shot attempts. Outside of him, not a lot more I love here. I'm not going to go to the Mo Bamba well. Probably not. I never play Gary Harris. I think I played him once all season. I got lucky on the night that he did play where I had a good night. Wendell Carter Jr. going against his former team. So there's always that little narrative, I guess, involved in there. But I do like Wendell. I didn't watch the game, but you're saying that they're running the offense through him, and I wouldn't be shocked just given his stats and his numbers of recent, knowing that he could play a little bit of the 4, a little bit of the 5. Mo Bamba still being in that conditioning, and it's the second half of a back-to-back game. I like him a little bit more at the 4 than I do the 5. Then he doesn't have to deal with as much of the, banging down low and having to potentially get fouls called on him against Vucevic. But I think Wendell Carter and Terence Ross would be my two and mainly only options I'm really looking at. I had a decent amount of Tim Frazier on tonight's slate. He just doesn't bring a ton of upside there, but if you land him at 3,800 and you know that you want something that you can feel pretty comfortable about, given the minute standpoint, he's always an option. On the Chicago side of things, it's going to be tough for me to really love any of these guys now that they're getting back to full health. Lonzo Ball back in there. I think everybody else is priced appropriately. DeRozan, if he hits a game winner in this one too, I'll probably just, stop doing these podcasts and just start, going to some more Chicago games. I don't care how much it costs for a plane ticket to go out to Chicago every night. This dude is just absolutely. I don't know if you saw the graphic of his. I think they put it on the screen after the shot of his clutch numbers this season. How he's been in the fourth quarter compared to like clutch shots, which I think they establish clutch shots, anything in the final 2 minutes of the game or whatever it might be. But he's shooting it was something like 57% from the field, 96% from the line, and then 100% from 3. And so I can't argue with it. So if you want to play DeRozan and just watch another buzzer beater, sure. But I'm really not interested in much over here on the Chicago side of the ball.
Yeah, man. And I'll be watching the game in real life just because, as you said, I'm loving what DeMar's doing this year. I think he's got a legit shot to be able to be in that MVP conversation if things keep going like this. Probably should be in the top 5 now, even though the NBA had him at number 8, which I think that's a bit disrespectful, but that's just what DeMar is. But as you said, they're all priced very appropriately. Lonzo at 7,600 is probably the only one that has a little bit of upside. But again, given the fact that it's his first game back, the price tag, I think there's other options out there. And I just don't trust Kobe White to be able to keep shooting as well as he has. So as you said, I'm just kind of crossing him out. I think the Orlando guys try to keep it somewhat close, in which case the 3-headed monster is going to kind of keep usage between them, and it's not really going to be great for any of them. So just kind of avoid the Chicago side, pick a little bit of the Orlando, and that's about it.
All right, next game, we have Detroit traveling to Milwaukee for the Pistons. Jeremy Grant, Frank Jackson, Corey Joseph, Isaiah Livers, Kelly Olynyk, Chris Smith, Cassius Stanley, Isaiah Stewart, Derek Walton Jr. have all been ruled out for the Bucks. Thanasis Antetokounmpo, Dante DiVincenzo, Brook Lopez, all out. Chris Middleton is questionable due to personal reasons. And this feels like a game I kind of just want to cross out as well. No game total, no spread, but much like that Philly-Houston game, I think it's pretty safe to say it's going to be a big one. I'll pass it over to you, though. You give me your take on Detroit.
Yeah, man, I'm kind of avoiding those top 3 altogether. I know Cade Cunningham is coming back. We don't know what his minutes are going to look like. We're going to have to find out if there's any sort of restrictions. But again, at 9,000, way too high. Hamido Diallo, I've played him for the last couple of nights, but obviously his price tag has just gotten to absolute bonkers levels where I just don't trust him to be able to do that on a night where everyone's back. So the only guy I may have some interest in is Luka Garza, purely because of the fact that everyone else is out. This is going to be a team that has the need for a little bit more size to be able to throw some bodies on Giannis. As you say, it's not always fun to be able to put big men against matchups like Utah, like Philly, like Detroit, like Milwaukee. But I think just given the situation of everyone being out, he's been pretty good in terms of staying out of foul trouble. So I do kind of give him the benefit of the doubt as far as that's concerned. He fouled out of the San Antonio game, but the last one, only 4 fouls, went to overtime, played great in that game. So I do like his upside. I think at his current price tag, he's got enough to be able to get to that 40 mark yet again. So it's a guy I keep in my player pool. And Trey Lyles is the other one who I think could find himself in a couple more minutes in this game, just given how everything's going to work. He's been removed from the health and safety protocols. But again, it's all about kind of keeping track of the news if there's any sort of restrictions on them. But those are probably my main two.
Yeah, the only other guy I guess I would throw in there, I'm with him off the big three, especially with Cade coming back. We're not going to see Diallo and Bay's usage be as high. The only other guy I would probably mention would be Saban Lee, who's out of the health and safety protocols as well. He's 4,200, so we're not getting like a bottom barrel price tag on him. But no Derek Walton Jr. and we know that Frank Jackson's out. Cade coming back in his first game back. Game could get out of hand. All these other reasons kind of put Saban Lee in that keep him my player pool, but probably won't end up landing on kind of territory. That's probably about it for me, though. I wouldn't, like you said, I wouldn't mind looking at those other two guys. But when push comes to shove, they'd probably only be GPP pivots for me. On the Milwaukee side of things, listen, if you're playing one of the two top dogs between Holiday, Giannis, I'll even throw Bobby Portis in there. He's a top dog. You're running it back with somebody on the other side of the ball. You're playing whether it's a Garza or one of these other guys. Now, listen, I'm not trying to drop, Hamido Diallo's salary with Giannis and pair those guys together because that's probably not the best construction, in my opinion. Maybe I'll end up playing this clip back and hating myself later tomorrow, but I just don't see myself spending up on many of these guys. I guess I could see it if Middleton's out, if you're feeling a little frisky, but I think Holiday's a little too expensive. Giannis always has the potential, but at 11-8, we need him to play a full, ample amount of minutes. Playing 30 minutes isn't going to be enough for me. I need him to play 32 to 35, and the only way that happens is if this game stays close.
Yeah, and I think if there's anything, I'd probably be thinking, again, GPP pivot, start to gamble a little bit on the fact that the point spread probably is going to be pretty wild for this game. I expect that we'll get to see more minutes from Connaughton and Nwora, all those guys who will get the usage. As long as they get to that 25-minute mark, they're in a pretty good spot, probably Nwora more so than Connaughton. But again, it's one of those where GPP pivots, I think at 4,700, you're probably looking back at KJ Martin for Houston at 4,200 and looking at him as a nicer spot. But beyond that, I'm just kind of avoiding this game by and large altogether. I just don't really like what it gives me.
All right. Utah Jazz traveling to New Orleans, taking on the Pelicans. For the Pelicans, Brandon Ingram and Jonas are both questionable. Zion, Tomas Satoransky, and Kira Lewis Jr. all ruled out. And then for the Jazz, Hassan Whiteside, Eric Paschall are both questionable. So no game total, no spread. I'll pass it over to you. Why don't you give us your take on Utah?
Yeah, the problem with Utah is they're been avoiding the COVID protocols by and large, so they've been fully healthy for most of it. The only little wrinkle that was interesting to me is that Gobert's price tag has dropped nearly $900 from the last game that he was on. So at $8,700, just purely because of that price tag, I have interest in him. As long as I'm expecting that New Orleans will have at least some sort of health on them. I know we're waiting on news about whether Valanciunas will be in or not. All of those kind of come into play as to whether I think this game will be at all competitive. And if that is the case, then maybe I have a little bit of pivot just to get Gobert out there. We know that as long as he can be on the floor, he's going to get somewhere near 20 rebounds, and he'll just keep catching those lobs to get himself into that situation where he could be mid to late 40s, maybe even low 50s. So that's probably the one upside play that I have here. By and large, though, Utah's just priced very, very appropriately. So I'm just going to kind of avoid that one and look for value elsewhere.
Well said, my friend. That is all I was looking at as well. I saw that Gobert price dip. Always gets intriguing. On the Pelican side of the ball, yeah, not so much interest. I mean, if we see Jonas sit, then you can look at like a Willie Hernan-Gomez or a Jackson Hayes. Jackson Hayes actually came out and has been playing more minutes as of late. So at 3,900, makes for a decent pivot off of, I guess, like a Tice or somebody else maybe. That is in a tough matchup as well. I mean, this isn't going to be an easy one, but if he comes off the bench, I'd like him more than starting simply because he will probably check in when Gobert checks out. So he gets a little bit of that second usage run. If this game gets out of hand, whatever it may be, it only increases his value a little bit more. So I wouldn't mind looking at like a Jackson Hayes. And then if we see Brandon Ingram sit one more game, we can start or continue, I guess, looking at guys like, Garrett Temple. But on 10 games, there's a lot of other options that we could look at. So I just don't see myself landing here all too often.
Fair enough. Well, I'm surprised you didn't mention Herbert Jones and all of that. We talk about how the rookie classes just continue to be awesome throughout this year. We just had Josh Giddey go ahead and break the youngest triple-double record. But clearly the one big beneficiary of Brandon Ingram sitting out has been Herb Jones. He's been in that mid to high 30s as far as his minutes are concerned. Has been getting consistent usage and hasn't been below 29 DK points for any of his last 3 games. And I don't expect that changes too much, even if Ingram is there, just given the fact that they need that level of offense coming through. As long as Zion remains out, I think they're finding that Herb Jones gives them that stretch 4 capability. And I'm still waiting for that game that Nickeil Alexander-Walker will start to hit some of his shots. I mean, he's got 16 shots in each of his last 2 games. Got 37 in the game prior to that. Still got 20 in this last game, which is pretty close to his 4,100 price tag. So just given the fact that he is going to absolutely keep chucking his shooting guard eligibility and he has decent usage. I mean, 13 3-point attempts in the last game. If he can get even 35% of those to go, he should absolutely smash his price tag. So I do think there is some intriguing upside as far as those 2 are concerned. And actually like them as a couple of guys in my player pool that I could see myself landing on pretty often.
Just keep it transparent, man. I haven't played too much Herb Jones all season. Just really haven't done it. Fault to my own. Maybe I take a couple off the chin. I know he had that career high game not too long ago, so I definitely took that one off the chin. But on 10 games, my main thing, and I always try to stress this, is I never tried to necessarily find the guy that's going to be or the guys I think are going to be the highest scoring of the night. It's more or less for me to make sure I'm comfortable with my entire lineup. I like every single person in it. I think they have good floors, good ceilings. And then if you're playing GPPs, there's always a little luck that's going to be involved where you're going to hit on one of these nights if you just stick with the same construction that you do for the most part. If you have a good sound construction and kind of theory on how you build your lineups. And so far, it's just avoiding guys that I never feel too comfortable about playing. And I'll take it off the chin here and there. I did that with John Morant for the first 3 weeks of the season. So next game, Denver traveling to Dallas, taking on the Mavericks. Mavs on the second half of a back-to-back. We saw Kristaps rest in that first game. He should be healthy for this one. But Ball and Vlatko Kankar are both available. PJ Dozier, Jeff Green, Marcus Howard, Bones Highland, Monty Morris, Jamal Murray, Zeke Naji, and Michael Porter Jr. are all rolled out. JaMychal Green is available as well. I'll pass it over to you. Denver Nuggets. Did you have Campazzo on that other slate?
I did. I did have Campazzo on that one, so that worked out pretty decently. It was just purely, honestly, I didn't think he'd do better than 30 for his price tag, but obviously had an insane game in that one, so that's probably going to push his price tag. I mean, it's definitely pushed his price tag, but it's pushed his ownership up, I'm guessing, this time around. So at that 6K price tag, I mean, I like him. He's still on my player pool just because of his shooting guard eligibility, but I think I'll probably avoid him just given the fact that I expect a lot of people to go ahead and jump on him. Will Barton, again, continues to be that solid guy all the way through for 6,200, but by and large, I just don't know about this game. Like, Luka Doncic is obviously still working his way back into full-on game shape. Hasn't had that real breakout game yet. He's had a couple of good ones before he went down, but don't know what he's going to do at this point. So I just kind of want to see whether Dallas can actually keep this close before I actually commit to any of these guys. But I have a feeling that I'm going to be taking this one off the chin, and I've actually just crossed these guys off my list because I don't think Dallas is going to keep this going.
Luka's been trying to get himself into game shape for about 3 months now, so I don't know if the health and safety protocols is really going to impact anything when it comes to do with that. Dude came in thick, but I'm kind of with you. I'm probably not going to be playing too much over here on Denver or on the other side of the ball for that matter. I do like Campazzo though, just don't love that price tag at 6K. It gets a little dicey. He's right in that situation where you really need him to put up 35 to 40 to really burn you, even if he gets 30. We're not sitting here all upset about it that he hit 5X. Like I said earlier, we kind of need more than 5X, so I'll take a pass. And then on the Mavs side of the ball, like I said over there, probably not playing all too much. Brunson's still now a little bit too priced up for me, considering that Luka's back and handling the ball a little bit more. Kristaps will probably be playing in this game because he rested on the first one. Don't love his price tag either. And that kind of pretty much funnels all the usage away from all these other guys that we have been taking advantage of, like your DFS, maybe your Brunson, Tim Hardaway, these kinds of guys. I think Hardaway actually just got out of the protocol as well. But I just don't like it. I don't like the situation. I don't like the price tags. I don't like the matchup. I'm probably all set here.
I don't think you like the team this year either, but yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head as far as that's concerned. I'm avoiding the Mavericks until they can show me they can at least do something to keep things competitive against the real team.
Yeah, no, I really haven't. It's been very unfortunate to be a Mavericks fan this season. And then, everyone's like, oh, wait till the trade deadline. And I'm like, for what? I mean, nobody wants Josh Green. Like, we don't have anything to trade. It's not going to be fun for us. I'm sorry, but unless they give up Brunson, we're not getting anything decent back in return. We don't even have a lot of picks left. But the next game, I could sit here and talk about how bad the Mavs have been all season long. Miami traveling to Golden State, taking on the Warriors in this matchup. Yeah, for the injury report, Klay Thompson, James Wiseman, only two players out. Draymond off that injury report or health and safety protocols. Looks like Klay Thompson's getting closer and closer. Miami on second half of a back-to-back. No injury report for them. No game total. No line. I'll let you talk about Miami. I was going to touch on them, but we'll keep the theme of you just taking the away. I'll take the home.
Fair,
yeah.
And I think just purely Miami is one of those situations where they are pretty much relying on five guys to be doing the vast majority of the heavy lifting. They've all been sitting in that kind of mid to high 30s as far as their minutes are concerned. And this is a back-to-back for them. So I'm a little bit concerned about them sticking with the Golden State Warriors. So I'm kind of avoiding the Jimmy Butler, the Kyle Lowry. I may have some interest in Omar Yurtseven, but it's just one of those things where I think Caleb Barton's been the guy I've kind of been landing myself on, just given a couple of the early roster constructions that I have. Again, that small forward eligibility, cheap guy, but more so than that, he's just been getting consistent usage for the last little bit now. He just had 33 minutes in the last one, 13 shot attempts up there, dropped 32. A pretty good upside for his sub 5,000 price tag. You look for that guy who can get you potentially 6x. I think he's in a good spot, and he'll get his minutes even if things don't work out. And the other one is the Kyle Guy situation, where didn't play super well in this game, but they're just looking at one of those things where they need to throw the guy out there. No pun intended. 24 minutes in the first game, 6 of 8 there. Shot 4 of 6 from the three-point line. Didn't do so well against Sacramento, but his minutes have been pretty consistent. That price tag at 4,100 is a little higher than that 38 that it was prior, but again, he's just been that first guy coming off the bench for him. They just have very little health otherwise, so they're just going to be forced to throw him out there, and even more so if the game happens to get out of hand. So I do like him at his price tag, and I think the upside is there in a Golden State game, which, despite everything else, is probably going to be pretty fast-paced just because of the team on the other end running you around. And I think Kyle Guy's minutes are pretty safe regardless of what happens.
I think it's just going to be your 7 for me, and even then, I don't necessarily love him in this matchup. It would just be out of necessity because they have really nobody else to play that center position. Golden State has been a team that's been able to beat up on other centers by pulling them out of the paint and doing other things that they need to do just to limit them. Play pretty quickly, all the things that we don't want to see when you're targeting a center. But the dude's been absolutely unreal for as far as fantasy perspective. I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched every single Heat game, but obviously just looking at some of these box scores lately, he has been just cooking and consistent. It's been large double-doubles for the past 4 games. I would say another reason why he can't pay off that 6,500 and give us another 30 to 35 pretty easily. I don't know if we'll get the same kind of game that we saw today against Sacramento, but 35 seems like it's in the realm of possibilities. Golden State, I'm all set there too. Everybody now back to full health outside of the norm, which is Wiseman and Klay Thompson. So we won't be seeing Otto Porter play power forward anymore. I'll be right back to Draymond. Gary Payton still being one of those main key cogs coming off the bench, but the price tag at 48 doesn't leave much meat left on the bone as far as value is concerned. So I'll probably take a hard pass on just about all these guys.
Yep, I think we can both agree on that. The kind of like joke of interest has been Iguodala as of late, where he's just been alternating great games and bad ones, but he's on that wrong side of the alternative here, so I'm not even going to think about throwing him in as a pivot, which I have for a couple of these runs that he's had.
All right, 2 games left. Atlanta traveling to Portland, taking on the Blazers here. Bogdanovich, John Collins, Gorgie Dang. We have Solomon Hill, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, all out. Cam Reddish is probable. For the Blazers, Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum, Yusuf Nurkic, Cody Zeller, Brandon Williams, all ruled out. I'm sorry, Zeller is doubtful, and so is Nurkic. But they're going to be down some players, needless to say. So I'll pass it over to you. Talk about Atlanta in this spot. Should be a high-scoring affair.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be one of those games where you're going to see Portland have their bench guys come out and be able to go start, and I have a good bit of interest on that side. But as far as Atlanta's concerned, it's all about how much you believe Portland will keep it close here, because Trae Young has been absolutely on fire as of late. That 11K price tag is definitely getting up there, but it's still a little bit less from what he had last time. He still dropped 62 DK points in that game as well, and shot attempts are just out of this world at the moment. He's anywhere between 23 to 28 shot attempts a game for the last 5. And he's been getting his shots up with more consistency and trying to get back to some sort of regularity as far as his percentages are concerned. So the upside is absolutely there. And I think if the game can be even close, he's just be one of those guys where on this kind of night, he could be the one to absolutely smash the slate, have the kind of Harden game that we've been hoping for the other end, though I do much rather prefer Harden over him. Same thing happens with the Clint Capela thing as well. He's just been absolutely on fire for the last 2 games now, 42 and 61 in those games as well. If Trae's having a good game, it's probably because he's getting a lot of those lobs into Capela as well. So it's all about, like I said, your risk appetite. I think they're more GPP pivots. I probably would rather save that money and go into a more safe game earlier on with either a Harden or a LaMelo Ball as my big guys there, but I wouldn't fault you for taking Trae Young in this kind of a matchup.
So I'm going to pose to you a 2 versus 2 question. I know you kind of already gave your take on it, but would you take Harden and Gobert or Trae Young and Capela?
Yeah, and I think Harden and Gobert is just in a situation where not only are their matchups going to be likely closer, it's going to be a higher pace matchup against Brooklyn for Brooklyn and Memphis as well. And just Gobert, his price tag has been paid off consistently when he's been in the 9,000s at 8,700. I think the capability is there for him to be able to get that, and I'd probably lean on that side, even though I could see myself eating my words in this one and have both Trae and Capela absolutely go off.
Yeah, no, I think you said it. You said everything perfectly. Those are the only 2 guys I'd consider, especially a lot of these other guys are out of the protocols now, so the whole Cam Reddish taking 20 shots, that's probably done with it. Fuerter, Gallinari, if all these guys are back. So I think that they make for great GPP pivots. You said it. If the game stays close, there's no doubt in my mind that they both hit value. I'd probably have more Trae than Capela, just not even taking prices into account. Just I think there's better center options, but Capela, those monster games are, I wouldn't say they're few and far in between, but a Trae Young monster game is going from 50 DK points to 65, 70. That floor is still super consistent for his price tag. Capela's bad games could be down to 30 to 28 DK points and then upwards of 60. So there's a lot more variance when it comes to Capela as opposed to Trae Young. But I'm kind of right there with you. On the Portland side of the ball, there's going to be a lot to like here, especially in this matchup. It's just, I guess, how much can you stomach? With no Lillard, no McCollum, no Nurkic, we kind of know where these minutes and this usage is most likely going to go. Norman Powell, 6,500, definitely comes into play. I can see him taking 20 shot attempts here. I know you play Norman probably a little bit more than me. He's not normally a guy I'm all too excited about, but I think I will have some shares of him on this slate. I've been playing a boatload of Larry Nance ever since Nurkic went down, and it's really only paid off for me in 1 game against Utah, the pivot game I had him in. But I'll definitely look at him in this matchup at 59. I just know his upside. Whether I see these 25 and 26 DK point games, we've seen Larry Nance drop 40 and 50 plenty of times throughout the past few years where he can just rack up rebounds, steals, hit a couple threes. There's so much to his game where he can just rack up the stat sheets pretty quickly. And then figuring out what's going on with this point guard position. It could be Dennis Smith Jr. I believe Anthony Simons is going to be available in this one as well. So we kind of want to monitor this and see who starts. My guess is it would be – actually, I don't know. Let me get your take because, the more I think about it, I wouldn't be shocked if Dennis Smith starts just to keep Simons off the bench to have that bench usage guy. Simons is the guy I prefer given the big discount that we're getting compared to Dennis Smith Jr. But I think both those guys are absolutely in play. But like I said, I still prefer a little bit more Simons as opposed to Dennis Smith Jr.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely it. And I actually would prefer Anthony Simons to be the guy to come off the bench and basically absorb all of that usage over there because they're going to need him to take somewhere close to 20 shots given how everyone else is kind of sitting out as well. So I expect a pretty good game from him. We'll find out what actually happens with him ending his quarantine if they actually go ahead and get him in because we've seen a number of these teams have decided to kind of ramp up conditioning with their players. But the Larry Nance thing, you kind of spoke about variance in the previous situation with Clint Capela. I'm kind of in that same boat with Larry Nance as well. It's just, I know he's got the upside and I often find myself landing on him just because of that situation, but it's just I don't know. He has those games where he can just be absolutely passive, not really getting that opportunity to do a little bit of everything, which he obviously has the capability to be able to do. And considering Norm Powell is just 600 more than him and is guaranteed to be number one option on this team, I would be leaning myself towards him quite a bit more as far as the forward side of things are concerned. And then if I'm looking into the cheapies, Anthony Simons, you already spoke about. I think Ben McLemore is also going to be in play. Just again, they need a guy to be coming out with instant offense on here. And we've seen him. If he gets any opportunity, if he gets even a little bit hot, he's just going to keep shooting. 36 DK points in the last game. It's one of those GPP ones. I think at his price tag, that floor is pretty well secure given how they're going to go ahead and need a little bit of his offense. But even if he's not shooting 9 of 22 or any of those things, I do think he will get somewhere into that mid to high teens as far as the shot attempts are concerned at 3,900. Sign me up.
All right, I got a question for you, and this one might be near and dear to your heart, and it might break it a little bit. And would you rather play Jaren Jackson or Norm Powell?
Oh, you're gonna do that to me. I think I'd rather play Norm Powell, just given the fact that Atlanta, first and foremost, isn't the greatest of defensive teams to begin with. Norm Powell is just in one of those scenarios where he can be that forward who just pushes the pace to such an extent that he can get his points in a bunch. I think that Memphis and Brooklyn game, even though it's going to be incredibly exciting all the way through, it might have a little bit more of a usage being spread around between Morant, Bane, Jaren Jackson. So, I think the upside is just as high with either one of them. I just think Norm Powell is the safer bet, as you say, that lineup construction and feeling a little bit more comfortable with it. But I'm going to have just as much Jaren Jackson as well. So it's one of those things.
All right, man. We'll move on to the final game. Minnesota traveling to LA, taking on the Clippers. For the injury report for this game, we have the Timberwolves actually playing right now as we record this. So no injury report there. Batum is questionable. Jay Scrubb is questionable. Brandon Boston Jr., Paul George, Isaiah Hartenstein, Luke Kennard, Kawhi Leonard, Jason Preston, Ivica Zubac, all ruled out. So I'll pass it over to you for Minnesota. Looks like they're hanging in with the Lakers right now. No surprise there. Lakers kind of stink. But give me your take.
Yeah, to me, the most exciting part about Minnesota and the Clippers matchup is just going to be the point spread when we get here. I have a feeling this is going to be one of the higher scoring games of the night, just given, one, the way the Clippers play and just the way that both the Timberwolves and Clippers just like to run the ball. So that gives them a lot of upside with a bunch of these smaller guys here. So Naz Reid, who's already killing it at the moment, 17-7 in this current game as he's going, is going to be in play again as long as Karl Anthony Towns remains out. I think he's got more of an offensive game compared to Jaden McDaniels, Jared Vanderbilt. So he just gives him that opportunity to be able to be that stretch 4 kind of 5 hybrid that they like. And the rest of these guys have a price tag that gives them the opportunity to be able to kind of capitalize on that. Anthony Edwards hasn't really had that monster game. He's obviously been out for a little bit. But other than that 53 that he dropped right before he went down, he's kind of been hanging about in that 40s. And I think he's ready to actually break out, get that game in. He's getting his shot attempts up in this game as well. And the back-to-back is probably my only kind of concern over here. And again, Norman Powell in back game is about 1,200 less and probably feel a little bit safer going ahead and throwing him out there. But again, as a GPP pivot, I think Anthony Edwards is another one of those guys that has the upside to be able to drop a 50-60 game if things are working right for them. And I think he's going to be required to have that kind of usage in a matchup where I'm going to go ahead and say that the point spread is going to be somewhere in the mid to high 220s. So that makes things a little bit exciting for me for both Anthony Edwards and for kind of the rest of these guys, with Naz Reid being my favorite of the cheap options.
I pretty much I never 100% a player. I like 100% in Naz Reid tonight, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. I have him and LeBron going right now when I was already in the green before the game started. So cross your fingers. Let's hope this one turns out well. So I'm all over Naz Reid again, but I'm also on Patrick Beverley, I think, at 5,200. Dude stays super consistent as far as his floor, going against his former team. Yes, Anthony Edwards is back, but we're not playing Patrick Beverley for usage anyway. We're playing him for the decent assist numbers, the defensive numbers, and if you could chip in 10 to 15 points, we're looking at probably about 30 to 35 DK points. So those are probably the two guys I have the most interest in. Other than those two, probably won't be playing much else. On the Clippers side of the ball, got to keep an eye on Marcus Morris Sr. Late scratch, through that in that last game, which really burned a lot of people, including myself. I had a share or two of them. I was probably underweight on him, but I still had a couple shares of him. But he is technically unavailable, is what they said, but or available but didn't play. So I didn't know. Did you read into that? Did you hear anything about that? Was it personal? Was it rest? And if we need him, he's there. I didn't quite gauge or see what the situation was, given everything else that was going on. But I just don't love all these price tags. I could see maybe going to that, Amir Coffee. He should draw another start. Got to keep an eye on it because we don't know necessarily. I don't think he drew the start in place of Morris necessarily. But if he draws another one, you could definitely look at him at 4,300. Outside of him, though, I mean, maybe Serge Ibaka as a deep GPP dart throw. They're just lacking some bodies in the front court. Again, even with that being said, he hasn't had much minutes or much point per minutes or usage or anything else that comes with it. It's kind of just a crapshoot with this team, and I feel like I'm going to be playing some of these Timberwolves guys. I always love having some late game action. I just don't love running it back with anyone on here other than Marcus Morris, but I need to know he's playing.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's just an addiction to have someone playing in the last one just to feel active. Otherwise, it's like you're waiting for yourself to get dropped down. It's just one of those things. Probably not the best advice on a ongoing basis because it's not a given that the last game is any good. But as you said, the Clippers have just been one of those teams that have kind of been beating people by committee. There's not really one guy that just absolutely takes over. You'll get the Bledsoe game where he goes absolutely off, but you can't really trust that. And he got more of that opportunity because Marcus Morris is out. When he's actually in, he only plays about 20 to 25 minutes, and then you obviously can't trust that price tag to be able to do that. Same with the Terrence Mann. He's been shooting really well for the last 3 games, has been doing pretty well as far as his price tag is concerned. But again, that upside is just not that high. There's really no one on here that I could be like, okay, if they have a good night, they can drop me a 40. And it's just like, hey, if they have a good night, they'll hit 6x, which is okay. It's nothing wrong with that. And it's a pretty solid play to be able to throw it. But I think there's other higher value options out there who actually have pretty safe floors as well, which I can take advantage of. So I'm just kind of avoiding the Clippers out here. I'll get some of the Minnesota on the other side just to have a little bit of exposure. But yeah, I just don't like any of these Clippers.
All right, my friend, you know what time it is then. It is our player tier segment. I'll let you kick it off with the expensive tier, the guy that you're looking at.
Yeah, and we talked about that Memphis-Brooklyn game being one of those games that not only is going to be must-watch, but it has a guy on the Brooklyn side that has been hitting 470 DK point games in a row, and it's all been just within the flow of the game. It's not like he's having an explosion beyond what we expect to see when James Harden is doing well. So given the fact that his shooting percentages still have room to be able to correct as well, I think the upside just absolutely remains. I think he's just getting back into the flow of things. That price tag is actually slightly down from that 11,500 it was last time around, and I don't see why we can't have another 70 DK point from James Harden. Keep riding him until the wheels fall off.
All right. I'll go with Mr. Bradley Beal. I think both these guys, you mentioned Harden before, I agreed with you. I mentioned Beal before, you agreed with me. There's a lot of good point guard and shooting guard options on this slate that are worth spending up on, but those two are probably my 2 favorite. I was thinking LaMelo as well, but I think just with Beal playing point guard in this matchup, this is one of the best matchups you can see on paper going against a team that struggles against 3-point shooting, that struggles against pretty much every single position, plays at a fast pace. So I'll go with some Bradley Beal. And then for your mid-tier play, who are you looking at?
Yeah, and with the mid-tier one, that's where you're seeing a lot of opportunities here to be able to go ahead and take advantage of the safe floors and a bit of upside. We spoke about Powell, but I'm actually going to go ahead and stick with my Jalen Green as far as the Houston Rockets are concerned. At 5,200, again, it's a bit of a keeping track of news where if Kevin Porter and Christian Wood get in any way disciplined, that just probably furthers my absolute lock as far as he's concerned. But in general, I think he's in a great spot to be able to produce. It's one of those things where he's going to be needed to likely be the number 1, if at most number 2 option on that team, depending on how things end up working out. I think the upside is absolutely there. His floor has been quite secure in that low to mid 30s, really. So yeah, at 5,200, I just think the upside is absolutely there for him to be able to get somewhere close to that 40 as he gets his groove completely back in, as he gets his shot going. And the fact that he's shooting about 50% from 3 from these last 4 games, I just like the upside where he could go ahead and do some damage against Philly.
You caught me off guard. I was 100% expecting Jaren Jackson or Norman Powell. So, I wasn't even going to consider either one of them because I was like, he's saying one of them. So, but the guy I actually was looking at, I just realized is $200 less than 5K. He was 50 or 5K or 5,100 on tonight's slate. So I imagine that he would be. So I guess I'll save him for my value, even though he's like teetering on that line, which you guys probably, as you imagine, we just talked about him a moment ago. So you probably already know who that is. Spoiler alert. So I guess I'll go with Mr. I don't want to say two wizards. I guess I'll say Daniel Gafford. I like Daniel Gafford at 6K. I don't mind that price tag. Looking for a big bounce back game for him against Charlotte. Again, everything I said about Beal is also true for Gafford. Only remaining center that they have, if he plays 30 plus minutes in this, he's pretty much looking at a floor of about 30 DK points with a ceiling of 40 to 45 pretty easily. So I felt ugly saying though, man. I didn't enjoy that. I'm looking over these mid-tier options. I mean, outside of Norman Powell and Gafford, I just don't love a lot of them anyway, personally. But then I'll pass it over to you for the value.
Yeah, and as you said, the mid-tier is kind of a crapshoot, but there's tons of value plays under 5K that are really exciting to me. I'm going to go ahead and stick with Herb Jones at the New Orleans Pelicans, 4,600. Pelicans is one of those guilty pleasure teams for me. I like watching them. I like watching them play. And the rookie class just continues to be really good this year. I'm seeing the development from Herb Jones. He's just getting so much more confident with his shot. Gotten 18 shots in the game prior, 13 in the one right before, and hasn't been below 29 for any of his last 3 DK points. And even before that was 20. So I don't expect any of that usage to go away, especially with Ingram being questionable. And if either him or Jonas Valanciunas do sit out, I just think that absolutely locks him in as well, because he's just been really, really good for them. And I think it's going to continue.
Yeah, I'll go with Naz Reid then. 4,800, sign me up. We're seeing the game that we're hoping for tomorrow as well, tonight. No reason why this guy can't have a repeat performance of at least 30 to 40 DK points, given the upside that he possesses. He's probably one of their best stretch bigs as well on this team. Very consistent when he gets a starting role. Anytime that he starts, I'm pretty much penciling him in for at least 32 DK points. So sign me up with some Naz Reid. So many, like you said, though, so many options we could have went with. But that brings us to the number 2 segment. Who's your Thrive fantasy pick for prop bet? What's the can't miss prop bet that we're looking at?
Yeah, I think there's a number of good options over here as well, but the one I'm finding myself liking is for 110 points on the over for Terrence Mann to hit over 13.5 points. It's just been remarkably consistent so far for the LA Clippers. He's closing for them. He's gotten in double-digit shot attempts in each of those games and has had nothing less than 17 points in the last 3 of them. I don't expect that to change too much. Minnesota, again, not a great defensive team. I last looked at the stats. I believe they're in the bottom third as far as giving up corner threes as well, which is Terrence Mann's absolute forte. So I like him for that spot. I like him for that 110 points. Lock him in. Prop up.
Love it. And that it's always cool when you give one like that, a guy that we just mentioned. We're not looking at for DFS, but the prop bets, they're a little bit of a different story. Absolutely. So just because we're not playing them DFS doesn't mean we cannot consider them for a prop bet. Let's see now, because I was looking at a couple of them, but one that kind of stands out to me, and it's not going to give you a ton of value, would be Mike Conley getting 9.5 rebounds plus assists. I definitely have some interest in that one. It's only worth 90 points. Obviously, I'd love to give you guys one that I feel great about. That's 125, 110, 115. But they got these lines up here, and they look pretty solid. I'm not going to lie. It definitely looks like it might be one of those, crapshoot kind of nights here. So I'll go with one that I do feel confident in, and it's going to be Mike Conley getting at least 9.5 rebounds plus assists. So that brings us home, my friend. That is everything that we have. Give us a follow on Twitter. You can find Haaris at HAK_devil. You can find me at Mike Apotria, MikeApotria. Give us a thumbs up, 5-star, rate and review wherever you're listening, whether it's Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube. Subscribe wherever you listen. That way you can get that notification as soon as the podcast gets posted. Looks like it got lost we had one for today. And it didn't get posted. It got lost in the cloud, whatever you want to say. Just don't know. Santino crushed it last night. Sent it in. We posted it. We did everything that we normally do. And for some reason, it just never found the airwaves. So try not to let that happen again. We didn't notice it until very, very late. And at that point, it was, I don't want to say it wasn't worth it, but this news changes so fast anyway. That we wanted to make sure that's what we try to do them the night before most of the time. So that way you guys can get an early look as we get an early look. Maybe it's on your way into work. Maybe you listen to it late at night. But we do apologize for that. And Harris, is there anything else you would like to say before we hop out of here?
I'll just wish everyone once again a happy new year. I don't know for how it's looking out there, but in Canada, we're once again getting into situations where we may be seeing further restrictions, further lockdowns. So just keep safe, stay safe with your family, and look forward to having a good slate on here and seeing you guys on the next one.
Absolutely, guys. Take care. Let's go take down some tournaments.
It's not easy being the one everyone counts on to keep the facility running, no matter the weather or supply chain hiccup. But we get you, Raymond in Buffalo, and Maria in Miami, Jules in Minneapolis, and Stan in Central Indiana, taking control of everything that's under your control. At Grainger, we're here for you with experienced branch staff at over 250 locations so you get the product you're looking for. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It takes a lot of ingredients to fix or build a car, like cooking, but without the frozen dinner easy way out. eBay Motors has 122 million parts. It's always the right fitment, so you can follow any recipe to a T. Whether it's a vintage Italian coupe that's classic like Grandma's meatballs, or a German luxury car that's as complicated as Oma's rouladen, to cook up something great in the garage, use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.